know what was said, of course, in private. We know what was said in public. And over the course of the next few days, we'll read the analysis of what it all means. I depart from the premise that Benjamin Netanyahu does not want to give justice to the Palestinian people, and that any justice he gives, he will have to be forced to give by the governments of the world, and in particular, the government of the United States of America. And all of these things I shall return to in the course of my address. But first I want to mark, as we must at this time of the year, the anniversary of the catastrophe which overwhelmed the Palestinian people 61 years ago. The Nakba, the catastrophe which wiped the name of Palestine off the map, which scattered hundreds of thousands of Palestinians as refugees, generation after generation of whom have now become many millions, some of whom will be here in this room this evening, living as exiles, millions of them living as refugees, some of them lucky to be living in Arizona, others unlucky to be living in the refugee camps scattered around the Arab world, or indeed inside Palestine under occupation itself. Each year we mark this. In Trafalgar Square on Saturday in London, I gave a speech in that famous place, Trafalgar Square. It's an Arab word, by the way. Not many people in Britain know that Trafalgar is Tarif al-Gar. It's the mountains around the port of Tarifa in Spain, from which our convoy, before mentioned, sailed to North Africa just a few weeks ago. In the square, I asked the people there assembled to remember the martyrs who gave their life's blood to try to liberate their country and return their people to their country. President Yasser Arafat, Abu Jihad, Sheikh Ahmed Yassin, Abu Ali Mustafa, and all the thousands of martyrs who fell in the as yet unfulfilled struggle to redeem Palestine. I asked the people to remember the prisoners, thousands of whom still living in dungeons, dark in Israel and in occupied Palestine, led by the hero prisoner Marwan Barghouti and all the other prisoners of all the political forces in Palestine. And we demand their release this year as every year. It's time to remember the generations who have suffered the uprooting from their land and the great crime which was committed against the Palestinian people. Just because the mainstream media in the United States and Britain ignore our commemoration of this disaster does not mean that we can cease to commemorate it. And the good news is that we no longer require the mainstream media in order to know what's happening, to communicate with each other. Many people have said to me in this room this evening, and it's true everywhere I go, that they are able to watch my television programs on Press TV, broadcasting from London every Thursday and every Sunday. Some of you listen to my national radio shows on Fridays and Saturdays. We were able, weren't we, during the 22-day aggression in Gaza, to know what was happening despite the obfuscation of Fox News and CNN and what became the Bush and Blair Corporation, but used to be the BBC. We were able to see the crimes as they happened in real time. We were able to communicate with each other about what we needed to do about it. We were able to see what each other was doing about it. And all of these things are greatly to our advantage and can never be taken from us. This technological cyber revolution, the collapse in the cost of entering the new digital media age, all mean that the future is brighter for us than the past, and the days that our media masters could control what we say and what we believe are rapidly coming to a close. I think you probably saw the great marches that took place in London during that 22 days. And it was on one of those marches, on the 10th of January, as the snow fell and as darkness fell in London, and 100,000 of us were marching towards the Israeli embassy, 100,000 in the land of Balfour, marching towards the Israeli embassy, demanding an end to the mass murder that was taking place in Gaza. That it struck me that marching, whilst necessary, was not sufficient. That protest, whilst necessary, was not sufficient. That something practical and real had to be done to come to the rescue of the Palestinian people in Gaza under that bombardment. We were all filled with rage here in Phoenix, as we were in London and across the world, at the atrocities we were watching on Al Jazeera, on Press TV, on the internet, in so many different ways. We saw the phosphorus bombs on television live being dropped, phosphorus gas being dropped on civilian people who had been conveniently locked up for the duration. All exits closed so the people could not flee, and then were bombed by gas. Imagine a state calling itself, though we don't accept it, calling itself the Jewish state, dropping gas on civilian people. I know about phosphorus gas. I've seen it before. In 1982, I was in Beirut when Israel invaded Lebanon with hundreds of thousands of soldiers. I was in Beirut as they edged towards the Arab capital and then began to systematically destroy it, reduce it to rubble and ash. And I went to the hospitals in West Beirut, and I saw the children who had been bombed with this white phosphorus gas, Israel's first use of that weaponry. White smoke was coming from the noses and the mouths of the children in the hospital beds. Because once you ingest this gas, you can never breathe it out. It burns the body from the inside. It cooks the child from the inside. It bakes the child to death from the inside. And we saw this war crime on the 27th of December. We saw it, in fact, falling on United Nations buildings, United Nations schools, bombed with an illegal weapon by a member state of the United Nations. We saw on Al Jazeera the little 3-year-old girl recovered from Zaytuna on the edge of Gaza City after lying out in the sun for 3 days dead, her skin black and blue.